You're on the Six Screens Telenetwork, earning the reputation of giving all the right ingredients, uninhibited in exposing the hard, cold facts about the Watchtower Society.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome in once again to a rockin' awesome night here at the Six Screens. We certainly welcome everyone coming in tonight. Thank you for wanting to be with us. Well, this particular program is called Watchtower Insider. Barbara Anderson tells all, and we are looking so forward to the program. A number of people are here as well. As I said earlier, a number of people listening in right now from pretty much all over the world. Now, Barbara has a guest coming in tonight. His name is Shayne Mechen, and he's a former Jehovah's Witness. Well, he lives in New Zealand, and he's coming to us from New Zealand. It's in the morning over there. It's only 10 o'clock in the morning. We thank Shayne for getting up and wanting to be on the Six Screens with Barbara and share his story. Now, this is something that I want to let everyone know. He wants to share his story. Shayne wants to share his story today with us, how he fully realized that Jehovah's Witnesses only care about their name. Did you ever think about that before? Yeah, as a matter of fact, I have, and it's a good thought. Yeah, they only care about their name, keeping their name clean. Well, we know it's getting tarnished. Well, let's bring Barbara on and say hello to Barbara. Hello, Barbara.
Hello. You'll have to put up with my voice. It's spring and the pollen is high, so I have a croaky voice.
Well, that happens to me too, Barbara, but that's okay. We're going to take you anyway. We can get you on here tonight, froggy voice or not, so that's good. Now, we're going to bring Shayne on, and he's coming in from New Zealand, so that's our good ex-witness friend, Shayne. Hello, Shayne.
Good morning.
Yes.
Sunday, right? Sunday morning?
Sunday morning, and outside we have, we don't even have any wind at the moment. No rain, though.
Well, we're so pleased to have you come all the way in from New Zealand. We do have a few friends over there, but we are so happy that you could make it in. Now, that's right here in the United States where I'm in Boston. New Zealand is about as far as you can go. That would be about 10,000 miles. Yeah, that's right. Now, the reason why I know that, my father, he was in the Marine Corps, WW2, and he was stationed in New Zealand. And he actually had a girlfriend in New Zealand. Her name was Bonnie. Do you know any Bonnies over there, Shayne?
I don't even think I would have been considered alive or anything by that stage.
That's right. I'm just kidding with you.
Well, anyway, I'm sure we could hunt her down somehow.
Yeah. Well, that's all I know about New Zealand. My father was there, and we do have a few people that do call in from New Zealand. But from what I understand, it's a beautiful country, and we're so happy that you could be with us. I will step out here and let Barbara kind of take over here. Okay. Well, thank you. I'm here, Barbara and Shayne. If you need me, I'll be listening in intently. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Yeah, Shayne made an outstanding statement. He said this to a newspaper reporter, and he said, they only care about their name. He was talking about Jehovah's Witnesses. Well, is it their name, the name of the religion? Well, I always thought that they didn't want to bring reproach upon God's name. But is it God that they don't want to bring reproach upon, or is it the name of their religion because they belong to it? Well, Shayne has strong reasons for his viewpoint, and we certainly want to hear them. Much of what we're going to talk about is to do with a royal commission, not the one in Australia, but the one that is and has been very effective. It's looking into abuse in New Zealand. So Shayne knows a lot about this. And I hope that people who want to ask him some questions or are curious about things that we don't cover, please ask. you're going to be, I think, delighted when you listen to Shayne's, I think, delightful accent. It's some of the words I don't understand. I have to ask him. It's almost like a foreign language, but not for real. But and but he understands both my translation of a word and then his translation. It's the same translation, but it seems like it's a totally different word. So if you have a word that you don't understand, save it and we'll ask. Okay. Now, Shayne has an interesting background, and I got a lot of questions. So I'm going to ask him right now how his life started off. Were you a baby? Were you a baby?
I guess I was at some time in the far distant past was a baby, Barbara.
You were a baby. So tell us when you were introduced to the JW religion.
Well, I guess technically in my mum's tummy. But when I was out of mum's tummy, I was 4 days old and I had gone to my first meeting.
Okay, you started off young, didn't you?
Yeah, I didn't really have a choice about it, but yeah, you could say I started young.
Would you like to inform us when you were born?
I was born in 1968.
I wish I could say the same. You're just a youngster. How did you feel about school?
I hated it. Well, apparently my father would always say, "You're not going to school, Shayne."
He did.
No need to. 1975, we don't have to worry about going to school. So, yeah, it was something that I struggled with school. I could not speak. I had speech impediments. I remember going to the therapist. I remember as growing up, there were loving women, and I consider it loving because I used to pronounce some words. I still do pronounce them funny, but I couldn't really speak clearly, and I did struggle with that, and they helped me get better at speaking. So I was very grateful for that. So yeah, no, school was not my favorite place. It was one where they knew I was a Jehovah's Witness, and I used to get spat at and hit and bullied, even from supposed JW children. So it wasn't the most pleasant time being at school.
You certainly remember that, don't you? I mean, it's unforgettable
Oh, yeah.
when you're bullied or you got a problem in school. But were you an academic scholar, though?
I would say I would be the furthest thing from an academic scholar that you could come across because, yeah, school didn't really interest me that much unless I was playing sport or mucking around with some computers when they first started coming into school. So, yeah, not an academic scholar.
Didn't Jehovah's Witnesses' beliefs affect your reason for not really liking school? Because you had a future, but what was that future that didn't include school?
No, it didn't. We were going to go to paradise. We were going to have, these big cuddly animals. I don't think tigers are really that cuddly, but that's the pictures. I remember the Paradise book, the pink one. One of my favorite pictures of all time was the one with the little squirrel in it. And I used to fascinate because we don't have squirrels in here in New Zealand.
No, I didn't know.
I didn't even know what one looked like until I actually saw one in 2008, and we'll get onto that later. But yeah,
I could import one, export one. You can import one. I can export one from my yard.
Yeah, I think we might get into trouble with that. The New Zealand immigration. No, that's not the right word. They would pounce on me they wouldn't even let it in the country.
Isn't that something? Well,
they'd get rid of it pretty quickly.
I'll offer it. I mean, we have so many. That's the thing. They're cute. Now, did you have any siblings?
Yeah, I did have siblings. The family had 2 boys and 2 girls. Well, they could have had 5, but that one was lost before it was born. And so I was the oldest in the end. I've got a male sibling who I do not call a brother, and I've got 2 sisters.
Mm-hmm. So then, what was your? I know that you were looking forward to paradise, but beside that, what did you hope to do when you grew up? If paradise didn't come when you wanted it to, you know.
I struggle with that because I can't recall anything to do with a life goal where I could say that's what I wanted to be.
I
It
see.
all was revolving around the J-Dub thinking, belief structure. Yeah, it's a pretty hard question for me to answer, that one.
Well, most kids, they look forward to, after education, they look forward to getting married and having children. So that didn't enter into your mind?
Well, no, what my father dragged me up was you're going to pioneer.
Oh.
Marriage or females never really came into it, because if you get married, you can get held up and do other things other than pioneering.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it didn't really come into my focus at the time. Obviously I got married because I've got 2 kids, and you got to be married to have kids in the J-Dubs.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So obviously, the playing with lions never came about, and so
No.
you did marry. You had children, and what was your hope for in the religion itself as a male Jehovah's Witness? What did you think that you would be doing when you were an adult?
Well, I could only, once again, my father set these goals. You know, you work up, you become your regular.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you started off with auxiliary pioneering.
Mm-hmm.
You then went regular pioneering. You reached for the goal of ministerial servant and elder. I remember going on to a part with the district overseer. My view, and I guess it still is, that whatever comes along, comes along. Well, he got me up on the Sunday morning, district overseer talking, pulled me out and he said, have you got any goals? Because he never asked me before what some of the questions were. And I said, yeah, I want to keep progressing. So would you like to become an elder? And I said, well, if that happens, that'll be nice. So while I did have some goals, I don't know if they were that strong. Looking back on what I now know my childhood was like, it's funny because I remember the first time I stood up and said to my father, look, I don't want to do that. And he goes, well, let's talk about it when we were going home, when we get home. And that was at a district convention in a place called Hastings. We were at the showgrounds. It was an outside facility. And that's all I remember is him saying, well, let's talk about it when we get home. And we didn't talk about it. I'd forgotten. But it was funny once I left, looking back, the amount of times that I doubted and I never followed through on the doubts that I had. I don't know why. Even when I left, I didn't think about them for 7 or 8 years before they started coming in. I'm going, oh. And then I started doing research and I went down some rabbit holes like most people do.
Mm-hmm. It's an interesting question for me because I wasn't raised a witness. And so for those who are and were raised as in a particular religion, it's just fascinating to hear how they felt about the religion when they were young and what goals they had. Most of the kids that I've talked to who were are raised as witnesses seem to be indifferent to the religion because they knew it from birth. So it just was a way of life, but they weren't extremely zealous. Perhaps when they got to the early teen years, then they started thinking about fitting in by getting baptized. But basically, you fit the profile of most of the witness kids. But what did you do? You said you didn't think about marriage and kids, but you did marry and you did have 2 children and you did become an elder. When was that you became an elder?
I became an elder in 1995.
Yeah.
So at that time, because I was an MS when I was 21, and I didn't want to get married. You know, the MS, more privileged sort of stuff. My father always put it to me as that's what I should have before I get married or anything like that. Obviously, I did get married. I worked up to becoming an elder, and I stopped being an elder when I stepped down in 2007.
So you lasted 12 years?
Yep, 12 years. And to be honest, some of the things I learned as an elder have even benefited myself in my business life, even as a JW. When you're in the meetings, whether you're giving the part or you're sitting there trying to stay awake, there are things that they taught, like you can go and knock on doors. Now, as a business person, you've got to go and knock on doors. So I'm not scared to go and approach a person or a prospective client to get a job from them. And I put that down to being part of the JWs. Obviously, being able to speak, because I did give public talks. I gave the odd assembly part. It was something that has become very handy for me in my life.
Yeah. So there were the benefits. And all of us who were very active in the organization, we don't always complain about being a witness. We do have compliments to give to the group for helping us in a way to be better speakers and not to be backward about being out in the public and so forth. So yes, those are benefits. So you lasted 12 years as an elder. Well, how did you feel? Because obviously you weren't an elder anymore after 12 years. So give us a little bit of an idea of how you or why. I'm not asking, for real secrets. I'm just asking for you basically, why did you give that up?
When we moved to the place WATCHT0WER, which I'm in Palmerston North at the moment, and that's about 40 minutes drive from where I live. I moved there because the need was great. And there was a circuit overseer called Tony Gregson, very lovely man. That's what I thought. I still think of him highly. And we were in Wellington, living in a suburb called Johnsonville. So we were part of that congregation, and he put the feelers out. Would you like to go and move a couple of hours away in a place called WATCHT0WER? Now, I did have friends in WATCHT0WER because my best man, he lived in WATCHT0WER. So I said, well, why don't I just go for a drive and see what we can find out? We went there, and sure enough, a few days later, we agreed that we'd moved there. The need was great. We'd be able to help out. And in my way of thinking, I always wanted to help out, and that's what we did. So we came back to Johnsonville. We let the elders know there, and we moved. We ended up having.
You were married then?
Yeah, we were married, but we had no children.
Okay.
And then Emma came along, and Ryan. I wasn't an elder then, but I was when both my children were born. So we moved there. I enjoyed trying to help. Now, I know I wasn't a perfect elder, and there is no perfect men who are elders out there. There are some loving ones who try their best. I guess looking back, comparing to how the elders are now, I wouldn't be an elder because I might possibly be too liberal. But I loved being able to help the ones I could do in the congregation. Helping the young ones if I could. Obviously, I wouldn't do that now. I'd encourage them to disappear as fast as possible. What I found closer to the end was the burnout. So Watchtower requires, as an elder, you do certain things. The things they do take you away from your family. They get you to do so much work in other families' houses. You don't have a lot of time to sit there and spend your time with the children. My wife at the time, she would take the children to the park. She would make sure that things like that happened because I was just literally too busy running around the small congregation doing what I thought was right. I never felt like I could leave because that would be letting the congregation down, the brothers down. And it's one of those things where you brought up a certain way, you just don't know Well, I found I couldn't make a decision of what really to do, even though I would have liked to have moved away to a place where I didn't have to do every single meeting part.
Well, so you were the only elder?
Yeah, there was a period we went through when I first moved there. There were 3 elders. I was a ministerial servant, and there was another ministerial servant. Now, as with small congregations, they come and they go, they shift away, and it's very hard to get a replacement to come in. And there was a period of time towards the end where I love the elders meetings because I was the only elder, right? Yep, that matter's dealt with, done, dusted. That was a good part. But what I would do is I would talk to older men who I considered at the time who were loving, experienced, and had a lot of understanding of how things were. There was one time where I looked at meeting parts and there was no men that I could use. And I was doing every part. And I spoke to another elder who was in the Featherston congregation and told him, and he goes, well, this is what we used to do down, and I forget the place he was at. He said, we would use the sisters to do the Bible reading highlights. And I looked at him and I went, what? Would you get a couple of sisters there talking about it and let them have take the load off you, let them do the Bible reading highlights. And I went, oh, so that's what I did. Well, that got around the circuit. The circuit overseer, when he came back, he pulled me aside. It was a number of times that I got pulled aside by the circuit overseer. And he said, what's going on here, Shayne? And I said, well, I spoke to this brother and this is what he did and this is what he suggested. Now, I was quite young as the presiding overseer. And as soon as I said I had talked to this particular brother, it was fine. It was almost like I was this young upstart trying to make waves and trying to blah, blah, blah. But as soon as he realized that I had spoken to a more mature person that I know he trusted, because he would use them to troubleshoot and things like that, there wasn't a problem. But that did get around the circuit in neighbouring congregations because it was sort of a bit of a joke in their mind that that was something that was happening.
Yeah.
So there were times when the Masterton congregation would come and help out with meeting parts. Both of the Palmerston North congregations, one could come more regularly than the other, and I had to do that because
Yes.
there was no way that I could do all the meeting parts and hope to survive. So if somebody was to ask me, did you study for all the meetings? Simple answer is no. There's no way you could do that. It's just impossible.
So you were under a great deal of pressure, and you were bringing up your children in a.
Well, I don't know if I brought them up. It might have gone to
Well,
my wife at the time who did
but
that. I tried.
they felt the pressure, and
Oh,
all
yeah.
those witnesses and a family the kids feel the pressure
Yeah.
of the parents being very active witnesses.
Well, my daughter did say one time, Dad, you weren't around much. So little did I know that, yeah, it did affect them. I didn't understand it at the time.
Were you happy?
At the end, no. There were times at the start I was happy and I enjoyed what I did some of the time, and other times I just grinned and bared it and just kept going the best I could. Now, if I did a decent job, whatever came out of my mouth at the time because of meeting parts, that's what came out. But overall, when I look back, no, I wasn't that happy.
Did you get burnt out?
Yep. And that's when I started to make some silly mistakes.
Oh, well, you don't seem like the type that would make a mistake.
Oh, I make mistakes. If they were alive now, you would go to some of them and say, what do you think of Shayne Mechen? And I'm sure they would go, because there were some things that I did. Would I be proud of them? I don't know. But at the time, it's what it was.
Yes,
even though I tried to do the best I could.
Well, we have a word as a witness to use, and that is we're imperfect. So that covers all. So
definitely.
Yeah. Now, it was a small congregation, and you spent most of your time with duties for the congregation.
Yes.
And when did this stop?
When I stepped down.
Oh.
I found it very hard. There were some times when it would, I just didn't want to be there. Now, I all along, I did not have anything scripturally that worried or bothered me. Even when I became an elder, there was a period where I would just be a yes person and go along with the body. Then something happened. I'm going, oh, crumbs, I'm going to have to speak up. And it was at that time that I did spoke up that I realized that I needed to speak up. Otherwise, some of this stuff would go through. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. We had an MTS graduate. I know it's called different things now, but he came in and he was quite headstrong. Up to the time, I would just agree with most things. Now, on this particular occasion, the district overseer was going to visit a week later, and we were talking about accommodation. And I knew what the house was like. The district overseer came, and he said, "Thank you, Shayne." And I looked at him and said, "What for?" "I'm so glad that you had a change of accommodation for us." What I would have done at one time is let the MTS guy just have his way. But he said, well, me and my wife are going to decide. And I said, no, we're not going to allow you and your wife to decide. This is a body of elders thing. And that was one of the first times I spoke up. And yeah, that led to some interesting time in the WATCHT0WER congregation. The district overseer, he, at the time, he said, what's this guy talking about fancy toilet paper for? He really lost his empathy, his kindness. He was totally focused on what he wanted and not what the members of the congregation wanted.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm listening carefully because I can fellowship with you on that, because my husband had to provide and do those things, and there was always issues, it seemed like, and you had just different personalities to deal with the circuit and the district overseers.
Yep.
So life brings with it complications. It's always that way, isn't it?
Yep, for everybody.
Yeah. And you say that you made mistakes.
Oh, yeah.
So the mistakes you made, we don't want to know. But we do want to know how did those mistakes influence the outcome? What was the outcome, I guess, is what I want to know. That is it too private? But
no, I can think of some of them. Like, this was one of the times the circuit overseer came and talked to his sister, and when he had left, I said, look, can I have that piece of paper which you read from to help the sister? And he goes, yeah, fine. And she would not listen to that. And even though it was the same piece of paper. And so I would say something, and the sister got really upset at me. So much so that in later years, we never had the free communication that we had earlier on. I was there to be able to help out the family when she did pass away. She got cancer, really sad. But yeah, it put strain on other members of the family as well, because they thought I was this young upstart elder trying to push his agenda. Those were the words that I got told from the daughter. You've just got to grin and bear it and move on.
That's it. You're getting closer to 2007. That's when you left. Am I right?
Well, that's when I sort of stepped down.
Stepped down, yeah. You left the beginning.
And so we moved after that, not long after that, because it was just, I couldn't handle being in the place. I just wandered out. We decided as a family to move down to Upper Hutt. And the congregation there, even though we had visited, because that's where my wife's parents were, I just struggled, really struggled.
Is there anything that you can remember in those years that you really, really enjoyed as a Jehovah's Witness? Now, you resigned from being an elder in 2007. So was there something that you did that filled your time that you can say you really enjoyed doing?
Maybe not so much in the J-Dubs. I started to concentrate on doing things for the business to provide, because it meant if I got busy doing that, I wouldn't have to go to the meetings, which sort of backfired on me in a number of ways.
So you lost interest in the meetings?
I lost interest in basically all J-Dub stuff. I
see. So around 2008, those years?
That years, yeah. Later in 2008, I can't remember exactly, I ended up, I had to go to the States for some training to do with my business. But before that, I thought, I wonder if I could go and visit the Bethels. And there was a thing called Bethel bus tours. So you'd hop on a bus tour and you would then go and visit. So I'd always wanted to go and see the Stanley Theatre. So we got there. That was a fantastic thing. And even to this day, I don't regret going on that tour because it's part of my history.
Right.
And on this video, there was a part in there where it showed these big forks and big spoons mixing up the food. And I thought, ooh, and look at the printing presses. I really wanted to go and see it. In that period of time, I managed to get there while I was in the States. And we ended up into the Canadian branch and a few other places that I'd always wanted to go to. I even had a meal, and I can't remember which facility it was. One of the district overseers here in New Zealand went there. He was asked to go back and do some extra training. I don't know whatever happened to them. And so I was able to have a meal with them when I visited. And that was fantastic, just to see the environment. So even though I wasn't interested too much in the JW side of things, the environment, see how it all worked, it was part of my history, part of my DNA, as it were, and I got to see it. So that was enjoyable. That really was. But it wasn't long after that that I then disassociated myself.
Yeah, but now you took the tour. What did that tour take in?
It went around some sensitive places, and I know there was one door. It had to do with the computer system, and as soon as they saw me look in, they shut it very quickly. We went around some of the printing of it.
Did you go up to Walk Hill, or was it just the U.S. you stayed?
Yeah, so the Stanley Theatre, we went around Columbia Heights and the buildings in there. Then we went out to, it could have been Wilkill. It's the one that had at the time the big model of the temple. And they showed us around some of the accommodations and how the buildings worked, the artwork. I can remember one thing that they showed us was, and they were quite proud, they were able to say, look, this is what they copied on CDs and in other publications of ours. And then later on, I realized they'd done exactly the same and copied and been fined big time for using illustrations like the Playboy type one and the drink one. And I'm going, huh? They never told us that. So, yeah. There was good times, and I definitely, obviously they wouldn't.
They had to really pay the money out for the lawsuits against plagiarism.
Oh, they did.
Artwork.
But there were some lovely people on that.
Yes.
I met some
I'm glad you're saying that, because yes, people. I agree. They were lovely people.
Yep, they are.
Did you get to go to Canada?
Yeah, we went into the Niagara side. The funniest thing that happened on that part was when I went to immigration. I have no idea what I look like. But they talked to me for what seemed like ages. And there was the witnesses going in, yep, done, dusted. But me, they kept talking. It's almost like I was a criminal or something. Maybe they didn't like Kiwis, I don't know. But yeah, it was a nice time. We went up there. We had a half-day sort of tour around the Canadian branch and traveled some more. And then I hopped on a train after that when we got back to New York to head over to somewhere. I can't remember. Oh, that's right, to the airport, which I went to Houston, and then after that to California.
So you really saw Jehovah's Witnesses Mecca, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah. Something I'd always wanted to go to. I did try and find out, can I go and work there? To be told, no, you're from New Zealand. So
I don't know what that has to do with it. Well, anyway,
I don't either.
Did the tours of all the facilities and all these nice people, did it fire you up again because you weren't very happy, and so
No, it didn't fire me up at all.
no.
I brought a stack of stuff back with regards to mementos from the Bethel's, little tiny things. One place we did go was the Holocaust Museum,
Mhm.
things like that, postcards. So the ones in the congregation that I was at and my family at the time, I took them things back. I've still got the Bible that I had when I visited one of the sites, and it's sitting on the shelf behind me.
Yes, you have quite a library. Oh, you sound like you're got one foot in and one foot out.
Well, at the time, yeah, that's what it was.
Mhm.
It's definitely not now, though.
Well, why were you so uninterested? That is something I would think that it would be fascinating to know from someone in New Zealand, because really under the skin we're all the same, I guess, or the same feelings, but sometimes we don't think about others from other parts of the world reacting like we did about the witnesses.
I can't give you an answer on that.
Did you see problems in the religion?
No.
No.
I didn't see any problems with the religion. I just didn't want to be there anymore.
Well, what did you think about the disfellowshipping and the shunning?
I grew up with it.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that was normal. You did something wrong, you got kicked out.
So
So for myself, it wasn't what it is now.
mm-hmm. Well, you kind of thought that it was a reasonable religion, just from what you said. It was a reasonable religion.
There was time when my son, in the congregation, there was a couple of loving elders who really did care, from what I could see. And I was out. I found out that my son got into trouble.
You were completely out?
Yeah. I disassociated.
Oh,
and the reason for disassociating was my then wife, when I said, you've got to give me time, because she says, oh, you got to come right, 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 you got to, and she said it one too many times. And I thought, no, I know how to shut you up. I will disassociate. And that's what happened. And she wouldn't shut up. So I divorced her. But she just wouldn't give me time. And she apologized later and said, I wish I had kept quiet.
Mm-hmm. She wasn't patient with your issues at the point to see.
I don't know really what she was, because I was just, there was no interest. Life was too hard.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, going back to my son, he did some normal teenage things, let's say, put it that way. And he did it one too many times, and they were going to remove him, disfellowship him. And one of the elders said, Ryan, let's just see what you can do. He's still a current J-Dub. But at the time, if he had come to me and said, Dad, this is what's happened, I would have said to him, son, listen to the elders. So I still felt, even though I didn't want to be part of it, that it was a reasonable organization.
Well, you didn't want to be part of it, but basically because of doctrines or policies, or was it
just tired of it?
You're just tired of it. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Well, at least you admit it. Lots of people don't want others to know that they have just lost interest, and especially since you grew up in it. That's all you ever knew.
That's right, yeah.
I'm not making excuses for you or me or any of us. I'm just saying, that's life.
It is life.
Yeah. So the elder arrangement, it was kind of hard on you. What did you think about some of the policies as the years went by? And know that you weren't really that interested in it, or did the policies Did you feel that they just didn't fit?
Nope.
No? Okay.
No, it's just because when you grow up in it, like even now they say you sort of got to listen regardless of whether it makes sense or not. I
Mhm.
was always taught from my father that you listen to the instructions. And even when I was an elder, and I had to deal with a judicial, yes, I did sit on judicials, but no child abuse, thankfully. I would have the elders book out on my knee, following the instructions when I was chairman in those elders judicial meetings. So I stuck basically to the rules. And even when we came to building the Kingdom Hall in Pahiatua, I got quite a hard time because I would listen to what the RBC said because we wanted a new Kingdom Hall. It had to be done. Let's follow the instructions. And some definitely did not agree with me going, right, let's follow the rules. We got the Kingdom Hall done. It was a beautiful project.
Mhm.
The comments that
The camaraderie was always
it
so
was
enjoyable.
brilliant. You know, you go to many, and some of them, it's like it's a strain. But our one, according to the reports we got back, was a loving one. It was a kind one. The atmosphere of the congregation was so good. They loved being part of that quick build project. And I would have to agree, the brothers and the sisters of the congregation got stuck in and they did everything they could to make sure it went successful. And yeah, it did.
So approximately 15 years ago, you left the organization, even though you had these good impressions about many of the things.
Yep.
So that's when you disassociated yourself around 2009?
Yep.
And what about was your family reacting?
Well, I got a text from my sister-in-law, very nice people, her and her husband. And she goes, well, I'm not going to be able to talk to you anymore, am I? That was the reaction. Once I disassociated myself.
You wrote a letter?
Yeah, I did write a letter. I don't know if I'd write a letter now, but that's what I firmly believed I needed to do. I thought, no, let's just move away. So I moved back to Palmerston North area, and I would travel down at least once a week because I still had quite a bit of work down there, fill up the day, and then have a meal with my children. At least once a week. I'd be in contact with them, and while they were under the age of 18, that was perfectly okay. And so that's what I did. I even spent the whole day with my son a number of different times because I love spending time.
Sure. Did you feel guilty?
Guilty of?
Yeah. Guilty because you weren't doing all the stuff that you did before?
No.
No.
No, I was sick and tired of it. I didn't want to be there.
You know, people have to recognize that that's a normal feeling on the part of many,
Yeah.
many people, you know.
Yeah.
When I left the organization, I never felt a day of guilt because I made the choice to leave. Nobody forced me to do it. And it wasn't something I wanted any longer. I said I actually said that to a reporter that getting this fellowship was a badge of honor. So, because I didn't want to be part of that organization anymore. It just didn't fit. I couldn't go along with it. I understand how you feel. And there are so many people who are listening here. And they're saying hello too, because I'm reading their comments. You probably could read their comments on.
I can see them, but I'm not reading.
Yeah. Well, some people can.
I will have a look at them later. It's nice that people are commenting, and I'll say hello to everybody who is there, whether I know them or I don't know them. Thank you for joining us.
It's nice. So you didn't have the guilt. You felt good because you had freedom. And
I don't know about that.
Is that not right? Tell me.
Well, I didn't view it as freedom.
No? Oh.
No, there was very little feeling, full stop.
Ah.
I was just glad I wasn't having to go to the meetings.
That was
Yeah,
a real chore to you eventually, huh?
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. What about your? How did your? Well, I don't want to get into your personal life, but I mean, your kids had to react. Their dad goes from an elder that they were proud to have their dad at elder, and then he is not even in the witnesses anymore. So, and after 18, did they shun you?
Did they shun me?
Yeah.
My
Before they were 18.
my daughter, she obviously she got baptized when she was 12, and she basically, according to what she told me, did it because mum, not because of me, but because of mum. A little bit because of me, because I was an elder. When I found out later, because she did do teenage stuff. She moved away, she got a boyfriend, she got pregnant, her mum dobbed her in, or squealed, like we talked about.
Dubbed, yeah. I had to ask you what was dubbed.
Anyway, she got this fellowship, and she wanted to, even though in the place Gore where she was living with her boyfriend, there was still a bit of favorable thinking, because she wanted to study to make sure what she had remembered was correct or not. Now, the elders of the congregation refused to do that, because she was wanting to go back in a sort of way. She didn't go back. She moved from Gore back up to Palmerston North. She came and stayed with me at the time for a little bit. And then she went out to her own house, because with having a little kid in my house, it was full with my family. And then she went back unbeknownst to me.
I see.
And so she got reinstated.
Oh.
So I didn't really talk to her much at all. There was the odd conversation. Then, after being reinstated for about 18 months, give or take, I get a text, and she goes, "Dad, do you remember when you went away for work, you'd seen the postcards?" And being me, I'm going, "I did." And I sent her a text back, which I never got an answer to. I said, "What's the text about?" Now, knowing that she had gone back. Anyway, nothing happened. And then 2 weeks later, she rang me and said, "Dad, can we have lunch?" Now, I said, "Yep." But in my head, I was thinking she's going to try and get me back into the J-dubs, and she's going to try and encourage me to do. And I thought, well, let's just wait and see what happened. We went and did a job in Levin. She came with me. We did a few other little things. Dropped her off home, and I said, "You wanted to ask me questions?" She goes, "Yeah." I said, "You won't like my answers." "Oh, okay then." And so she hopped out. 2 weeks later, I get a Facebook request, and I'm going, what the blazes is going on here? So I sat outside her house from about 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock, and she did not come home. And I thought, okay. So I went home, grabbed some food, and I thought, no, I'm going back. I stopped outside, sent her a text. I said, "Are you home?" She goes, "Yep." 4 hours later, she was gone. What she wanted to know was, why was I no longer a J-dub? Because, as she told me, there's no love. I can't see the love that they claim. And yeah, she signed her disassociation letter, and she was off to see another ex-J-dub, one of her good friends in Scotland, and she handed in the letter, and that was it. She was gone. With my son, what the elders did do was, when he was doing his teenage things, they would use my words against me to guilt trip him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He's still in, and that's the hard thing. But
Sure.
it's only the small things now that get to me.
Yes.
The
Mm-hmm.
rest of it, nah, I don't
Mm-hmm.
care. I know what the organization is like.
It has to do with family and
Yep.
and the emotions that it brings up. You can't change what it
No,
is. We identify with you on that.
yeah, he is an adult. He knows I love him. He hopefully will come and knock on my door, and then we'll start again.
Mhm. Well, at this point, his need is greater for the religion than it is for his dad.
Yep. And that's
so,
fine. That's what
yeah,
it is. It's
that's
just one of those things.
that's the way we look at it too. And they have that right to make choices.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
They're adults. He's got his own life. I don't know if he's married. I don't know if he's a servant. I know diddly squat. The last time I saw him was when I was in hospital. I was having a kidney transplant. Yeah.
yeah.
So, yeah, I saw him then, and I hope he's doing well.
That's right. That's what we all say about
Yep.
ours, who our loved ones who choose to shun. And
Yep.
I don't hold any feelings of dislike over it. I just life goes on. It's the way it is, and you understand that also the shoe could be on the other foot either too. It could be you that
Absolutely.
are, and he's out. So now you left. You're out since 2009, and the years are passing by.
Yep.
In 2015, they in Australia, of course eventually the branch in New Zealand came under the dominance of the Australian branch. And in 2015, what did you think about the child abuse? Now, you said you don't have any problems with the policies of the organization. You never dealt with a child abuse case.
Correct.
And many of the elders never have dealt with them, especially years ago. The circumstances were, we could talk a long time on that, but we won't. And so, what do you think about it when it convened in 2015? We were excited in this country hearing all about the Royal Commission looking into child abuse in religion.
And at the time, I would have gone, what are you talking about?
Oh, you didn't know?
I didn't know there was a Royal Commission until 2017. And that's when I started to wake up. Up till that time, I had no idea because I thought I knew their procedures and their policies. And there was two things that started to wake me up going down my rabbit hole.
You mean you left the organization and you didn't consider yourself woke up or awake?
No, absolutely not. I think I said before, I felt it was a reasonable organization, and I would have encouraged my son to, if he had asked me, to go and listen and talk to the elders and work through it. It wasn't until I was sitting there, and in 2017, I'd heard there was a new elders book. That was the first, I don't know if it's the first soft covered one or not. And it said in there that an elder could stay an elder even if years before he had done something wrong, if it appeared that he had God's Holy Spirit. And I went, hell no, what the hell's that all about? I remember saying that out loud, and I said to my mate who's living in Australia, and he goes, you're kidding me. We were sort of quite animated about this whole thing. And I'm going, what the blazes? And then very shortly afterwards, it was they protect pedophiles. And I'm going, no, they don't. Did some research, went, oh, yes, they do. And
Uh,
that was the two things that made me wake up
so
or allow myself to ask questions.
your eyes popped over until
Yeah.
this time. You probably felt deep down that they had the truth, or you
Oh, yeah.
just couldn't live up to it. I mean, that's the way so many
Mhm.
think,
Yep.
and they blame themselves. So you have a lot of people that have left the organization because they blame themselves for not being able to live up to what's expected of them. So here we are, 2017.
Yep.
Your eyes
So
are
it took
popping
that
open.
long for me to wake up.
I'll say
So
that's a
when
different.
I had woken up, that's when I got the messages from my daughter. So I was able to help my daughter because she was asking questions. What I've found is that if a witness isn't looking and asking questions, I'm never going to wake any of them up because they are so mentally indoctrinated that they still have the favorable look on the organization, even though they don't want to be part of it.
Mm-hmm,
So,
mm-hmm.
yeah, it was one of those things that I could not believe. And then I went down the rabbit hole, and my family at the time I was going in and out of the room. Did you know? Have you? What? And they were wondering what I was going to say next, because it all came as a big shock. And apparently, yeah, I did get a little bit angry. I didn't get totally angry. I was just unbelievably surprised at what I was now learning from an organization that I thought never had a problem with child abuse for a start, because they used to always bash the Catholic Church, to find
Yes.
out that they
That's
go, they're just the same. And I just could not believe it.
yeah.
So, yeah, that was waking up period.
I'll say. Well, when I was working on the child abuse issue in the writing department, one of the senior writers, he said, "Well, I think we should not put in Watching the World all these experiences about the negligence of the Catholic Church."
Mm.
And that's when they ceased putting it. But nobody really noticed, but it was true. They did not put it anymore. So I have to give them credit for that. But that was because some of the writers were really thought it through and were hopeful that things could change. Like I knew writers, senior writers, that didn't believe in a lot of the policies of the organization, but they obeyed. I wondered if I could do that, But I know for sure that because I asked once about abortion and why the washer didn't make more issues over abortion. And one of the well-known people I could have said, we don't, because the sisters have it hard enough in this organization. So see, there was personal
Yep.
issues that people would have, but they obeyed the what we call the policies and practices, because to do otherwise, well, then you find yourself outside the organization. Now,
Yeah.
2018 helped you wake up too, and I'm bringing this up because little did I know that across the world in New Zealand, somebody was watching me.
Yeah. I hadn't met you at that stage. It wasn't long after that.
That's
that
right.
that the documentary Cults and Extreme Beliefs, and it was the one with you and Romy in it.
Mm-hmm.
It was that video that was part of forming what we call over here JW for Justice.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I just couldn't believe it. I reached out to a guy, never been a JW. He lives in Australia, and we got to talking. He said, "Oh, I need to introduce you to a lady. She runs the network." And that lady called Liz Tonks. And since 2018, we've been working with Liz and the Survivors Network. They've been a big help in getting us to where we've been able to help the Royal Commission, because that started in 2019.
Yeah, we'll get to that, because that's a milestone right there, and you're fully immersed in that milestone. So you went from complete inactivity as far as being a witness, then a do nothing person for a number of years. You were just kind of enjoying the do nothing years, right?
Yep,
And
absolutely.
and then all of a sudden in 2000, around 16, 17, I guess you start to think,
yeah.
So
And then the documentary came, and then I just could not believe what I was hearing in so much detail. And I thought, I used to be an elder. I know their policies. Well, at least I thought I knew their policies. Let's use it. What are they going to do? Disfellowship me? And so I used what understanding I did have. So we started working with.
were you convinced? You must have been convinced that we were telling the truth.
Oh, absolutely.
You were hearing.
No hesitation in belief. Because when the year before I had found out that they protect pedophiles, and I did research, I'm going, how the hell do they protect pedophiles? Then I realized, yep. And that's when the documentary came. Now, I know there's been plenty of other documentaries, and they just add weight to the problem within religion as a whole, let alone the Jehovah's Witnesses. So, yeah, it's just one of those things where I look back on it now, and it gave me a purpose in life, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
It was something that I could get and help and do something, so much so that during that period of time while we just connected with the Survivors Network here in New Zealand, I mentioned the movie or the documentary to a mate who was in the Pahiatua congregation. He's actually still there. I saw him the other day. He's lost his mum, who used to be a witness as well. They got both kicked out because they questioned. And so, yeah. And he goes, well, what about such and such? And I go, what do you mean? He's done some things. I said, you're kidding me, right? So little did I know in that congregation that there was an alleged pedophile, and I'm going, what? And what came to my mind, the first thing I heard of was, I allowed my son to go and stay at his house for the weekend. And I'm going, oh no. So I rang him, and in a roundabout way, I asked him, has anybody done anything to you? And he goes, no. That was a sigh of relief. It then turned to reaching out to one of the victims we knew, and we got hold of his sister because she was his guardian. We found out that, yes, that person had abused this young man for 12 odd years. During the research into the whole thing, it was discovered that he was part of a child abuse sexual ring, which had another Jehovah's Witnesses involved in it, had an accountant, and some guy that we couldn't find out details on. We just about got that in the news on TV3, but for some strange reason, it stopped. We had all the information. We had the recording of him admitting that, yes, he had done it with this young person at the time, and then with others because of a doctor's encouragement, which TV3 couldn't believe what they were listening to it. That never went to air. We're not sure why. The benefit of that is, one, he did go to the police. We were able to sit in the interview room with him. He also got a letter of acknowledgement that it did actually happen, which I do have that to this day. Now, that particular alleged perpetrator has died, and he will not cause any more harm. The problem is he did look after and take up into the mountainous region, Scout Kids. We've got a thing called WINS, which looks after children who are in deep trouble with their family. He looked after them, and the stories we heard, unbelievable, disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
And there were no other victims that were willing to come forward because they just wanted it out of the way, get it out of their life, and it would have
What
re-traumatized
was
them.
that year? Like what, such as
Okay, so
19?
well, I'll put it this way. I was there in WATCHT0WER from 92. It was happening in that period of time.
Really?
I didn't know it was happening. It wasn't until one woman from the J-Dubs went to the door, and that was the sister of the victim, and she goes, "You do realise that ... abused my brother." Now, that particular woman never went to the police. She went to the elders turned up, and in front of the victim, they did allow the victim to go there. He was saying, "Okay, so what about this person? What about this person? What about this person?" And they still did nothing to it. He did not get disfellowshipped. He was on public reproof.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And they kept it as inside secret, right? So
absolutely. So I went undercover because I wasn't a J-Dub. He didn't know, like, we can record. I knew it was happening when we had victim come to his room. He was in arrest home. He knew it was being recorded. There was two of us because we wanted to make sure we had all the details correct with what was being said. Like I say, he's died. Fortunately for the young man, he managed to start moving on with his life, and the Stockholm syndrome was starting to disappear, where he realized what had happened to him and he wanted to move on, which he's done. He's doing a lot of good things for himself. So we were able to help on that front, but it's not the only time that I've taken victims to the police so they could talk to people, because what led up to that was the first time I had to deal with the police. The second time had to do with, and it blew me away, because an alleged perpetrator was part of my family. And I've just found out another name that he allegedly abused, and I don't doubt it's not true. I believe it totally. He not only did his sister, he also did his son, and there are stories of other things. He has been charged with 9 counts, but that is only to deal with one individual of all the individuals that he's done. And an elder knew it, and he said, "Oh no, he would not be like that." So, yeah, and I went and undercover once again because one of the victims, she needed justice. I went down to Christchurch. I've got it on recording because we just about got that into the local media for New Zealand. We were missing one photograph, and then COVID came along, and interest in that article because of COVID was put aside, and that never got into the environment. But we've discovered here in New Zealand hundreds of cases, alleged cases. We know some for sure. Some is hearsay, but yeah, it's prolific here in New Zealand.
Do you know that the statistics, and this is a few years ago, I read this, the statistics is like when there's abuse in the family, like 91% of the people who have abuse in the family do not report it.
Correct.
So, well, you know why? Because you don't want to have the distinction of the neighbors talking all about the grandpa doing this or the cousin coming and oh, they played with my son and my, you know. So it is disgraceful thing for a family. Well, Jehovah's Witnesses consider themselves a community or a family. And
They do.
so they care about their name, just as we care about our personal name and the dignity that attaches to the name. So do Jehovah's Witnesses individually care? They care as much as everybody else cares. They don't want that reproach upon their personal person. But the organization now, you made that statement about that they. I'm going to read the statement. It says they don't care about the ones that have been abused. They only care about their name. And this was to a reporter. And because you were interviewed because you are part of that group, the survivor group of JW for Justice. And the organization took a stand, a legal stand that when I heard of this, I had to do a lot of looking to understand what was going on. And so you're going to explain to us what happened, that the organization showed that they cared more about their name, the Jehovah's Witnesses' name, than they did about the abused ones. And that's what you were talking about. So so we're right around 2018.
Yep.
And you're pretty much the expert. I'm not.
Well, I don't know if I'm an expert. I've been involved in it. I know and understand a lot. So
let me take this. I want to take the lead right here because I want to say the name. And then you got the carpet. New Zealand Abuse and Care Royal Commission of Inquiry in State and Faith-Based Care. Yep. So the New Zealand government, they had a royal commission, or have a royal commission, inquiry into institutional, state institutional abuse, like when kids are in a hospital or some kind of place and they're being abused, and they want to find out about that. But then they added on faith-based care.
Yep.
And they keep using the word care here. So that was a little different than the Australian title.
Totally different.
Yes. So tell us how, because this is really the most important part. I mean, your experiences as a normal human in Jehovah's Witnesses and out of Jehovah's Witnesses, we find that interesting. That word, I use it all the time, but it's leading up to what you have become or what you are doing. So different than what you ever thought you could be doing, because you never dreamed that there was such a situation. And so the non-witness community in New Zealand, they could appreciate having a commission, a royal commission, looking into abuse in state institutions. But all of a sudden, they're putting faith-based institutions to bring them into this, take a second look at this. Did you all have anything to do with introducing or getting the government to add faith-based or religions into this inquiry?
Myself, no.
No.
Because all the lobbying and the go in behind the scenes work was being done years before I even woke up. So there were a number.
But there were some ex-JWs that were trying to get the government to look at the religious angle here.
There was. But what I found with the commissions, or anything to do with government, it's not just one individual, it's a collective group. So in the New Zealand case, there was a group, predominantly at the time a Catholic focused group, which then became a group for all faith-based. Now, it was that group and a number of other non-J-dubs that started it all off. And they started to lobby the government. You need to do this. You need to do this. And no doubt there were submissions or points sent to the commission, said you've got to include faith-based. And they had reports about the Jehovah's Witnesses, about Brethrens, Mormons, Catholics, obviously, Presbyterians, Seventh-day Adventists. They were all being pushed as, let's include faith-based. So under pressure, the government relented and included faith-based. So there was a lot of work done before I even came on the scene. It wasn't until that 2018 document that I got introduced to Liz Tonks, who had done a hell of a lot of work. Am I allowed to say that? Well, anyway, that's the truth. Along with many of the ones she knew, work was being done that nobody knew about. I only know about it because of my association with Liz and a lot of the other ones who are part of the Survivors Network. I wouldn't know half the stuff if it wasn't for that network. In fact, I honestly believe, even though we were setting up J-Dub for Justice to help with the Royal Commission, if it wasn't for that network, I wouldn't be, in a way, and I struggle to understand some of it, like it goes way over my head. I've learned over the time the ins and outs of it. It takes a lot of hard work to get your head around how government works and lobbying works.
Yes.
It's just, I know you've done it. I've been there to support. I can do things. I can help our little network, but it's basically at an end now. But so the faith-based was included.
You know, what you're saying reminds me of all the work before New Zealand got involved. It reminds me of the Australian, and there was so many people that were involved before it became a public. It went public with what they were doing, and it reminded me of when we interviewed Stephen Unthank, because he was so involved in all of that too. But these folk, they didn't blow their horn about all of this. They were just mostly concerned about justice for the kids, and not worried about the name of the religion that was harboring the pedophiles. See? So
you just don't realize the work that goes on. I do understand it so much better now, because for hours and hours and hours as a network, there was a lot of work going on, lots of meetings going on. Obviously, we were there as the representative on the J-Dub side of things, because we could get the documents from ones like yourself and other places. We had some of the documents, and it was useful. And then later on, other of the closed groups came into the network. But during that period of time, even, I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but I will, they didn't really want to do faith-based.
Yeah,
they wanted to leave it out.
That's right.
So yeah, that 2018 period was a busy period because, and I want to give a shout out to some of the ones who were part of the initial J-Dub for Justice. Like, there's a guy, his name's Kelly. I don't know if I'm going to murder his last name. I just call him Big K. His Kelly Peruzzo. I've most probably murdered that. His story is he's never been a J-Dub. His wife started studying. He did some research, and he had looked into the Royal Commission, and he was really concerned. Now, I can't remember how him and me met, but one of us sent a message. It might have been me, could have been him, to each other. And then we started to talk. And we got this JW for Justice thing going, which is on Facebook. We've got it Twitter, and we're on Reddit. Not that we use it that much now, but during the time, ones like Rex Price, he was a big help. We had a victim who was very vocal and really wanted to help. She was part of it, called Devi. We even had somebody, a Filipino, who lives in Macau, and she did a hang of a lot of work behind the scenes. Nobody really knew about her. There were other ones like Rachel Jackson. These are ones who mostly are in New Zealand, and they were there helping us with the JW for Justice, which we used to then talk to the lawyers in the commission. There were so many more out there like yourself, ones who have the information that I would ring, I would talk to. We would have conversations with, who could give us the information we needed to pass on to the Royal Commission. Now, I know here in New Zealand, some of the survivors would make sure they had the email. They would send in all sorts of stuff. I know there was reports coming from Australia. There were some from outside of Australia. There was one particular gentleman. He wrote a 28-page submission, which they used in the appeal court. And he lives in New South Wales. It was a combined effort. There's so many that
I agree.
I hate to not mention them, but we don't have time.
No,
but we set up the JW for Justice, and away we went. So
I have a lot of knowledge of it, but of all of this stuff. But if I got to say, we couldn't. None of us could have done this without the hundreds and hundreds of people all over the world that have taken lead in to bring justice. How did Watchtower react? Now we're going to get to the meat of it. How did they react to their name? Because they are a faith-based institution.
Okay, so according to the court documents that we got last year, it sort of gave us an outline of some of the events that I would call them the JW delay tactics. So they were included right at the very start. In 2019, the Jehovah's Witnesses were included in the commission, even though they and the commission claimed they weren't. Right at the very start, when it was announced, they included the Jehovah's Witnesses in there. Later on, they said, we are now going to investigate the Jehovah's Witnesses. And I'm going, they were already going to be investigated. So what happened was that in 2018, and I'm just going to look at the court documents I have down the side of my screen, the commission did approach Watchtower here in New Zealand, and Terence O'Brien said, well, you need to make sure you contact the Christian Congregation Jehovah's Witnesses Australasia. So they started to do that. Now, later on, I'm just going to scroll down because I've moved from the screen. So on December 1st, 2021, CCJWA, out of goodwill, made submissions in response to the notice to produce. And they listed a few things. One was that the elders in the Congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses do provide pastoral support to congregants, albeit they are instructed never to do so one-on-one in private, or in the case of children, in the absence of child and parents or guardian. This is number 14, accordingly, with the Commission Minute 16, which they had an issue of, which we can get onto shortly, in mind with CCJWA, searched the records of the Australasia branch office and individually congregations of Jehovah's Witnesses in New Zealand to identify any records that disclose allegation of abuse perpetrated by elders in the context of providing pastoral support. Now, I have a problem with that. problem is the next sentence where it says CCJWA did not locate any records where there was evidence that the abuse perpetrated by an elder was in the course of providing pastoral support. CCJWA did not exist. And so
Yes,
they had no records.
that's right.
And you're going, when I first read it, I thought, what a bunch of liars.
Yes.
But technically speaking, they were correct. But that's where Terence O'Brien directed the commission to go, to the CCJWA. Now, the Royal Commission, while they've had their challenges, they didn't listen to a lot of things that were being given to them about the Jehovah's Witnesses, regardless of whether they are ex-JWs or people in normal life, in the public. They did not listen to them. So the court document that I've just read from, the commission never did its research in how tricky Watchtower was being.
Who would think a religion would lie?
Oh, of course.
So,
So you sit there scratching your head,
yeah.
and you're going, oh. And right at the very start, one of the things that the network did, and the ones involved, would get hold of the commission and say, you do realize the J-dubs might do this? And their comment, in my words, was, oh no, she'll be right. We have it all covered. They did not listen to the ins and outs of what the J-dub snake-like organization is like. Like they didn't listen to a lot of the other faith-based. And my conclusion to this whole thing is religions are all the same. So while the J-dubs don't care about anything else, or maybe they care about money, but they don't care about anything else apart from keeping their name clean.
Yes.
What
So
a
do
load
the
of
other
bollocks.
religions. So do the other religions.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's just,
Yeah.
you know, I know a lot of ex-J-dubs and current J-dubs have been through some trauma. But one thing I've got out of working with other faith-based organizations like Scientology, talking to Brethrens, they have different names for exactly the same thing.
Yes.
They
Yeah.
act like each other.
Yeah.
While we think as ex-J-dubs we are special, and I don't ever want to take that away, every other religion has control, has fear, has coercive behaviors
That's
that
right.
abuse humans' rights.
Yes.
I never, ever, ever expected what I found with regards to J-dubs and other religions. No, they're just as bad as each other.
I'm glad you brought that out, because that is a fact, and we're not picking on any particular religion, but the facts are this, and you can't deny it. It has to be a complete change in attitude, and perhaps it's coming slowly. Now, you had very good coverage in the newspaper. I started looking at all the newspapers, and in 23, my gosh, you had August, you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 articles or more in August, and you had September of 23, major articles in November, September, I don't want to miss that one. That title of one of the articles was Jehovah's Witnesses Church spends 3 years. 3 years.
And when you look at the court documents on that,
fighting
and you show it to non-J-dubs, they go, what the hell are the Jehovah's Witnesses trying to hide?
Yeah, that would be an automatic brief.
Yeah, and they just couldn't believe what they were reading. Like, I would have to give Anusha Bradley a big shout out for what she was able to accomplish, because she found more.
Constantly,
she found so much more than the commission ever found. because the J-Dubs never got investigated.
And the famous thing about the J-Dubs is what they said. The religion of Jehovah's Witnesses does not and never has sponsored any activities that have resulted in children being under its care, custody, and supervision, control, or authority. That's what the Christian Congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses Australasia said. And you said to the reporter, these claims are patently false.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we all know that, I mean, the elders always had something to do with the kids. They told the kids about the field service in the ministry school, constantly admonishing parents how to do this and raise the kids. It was just part of the family of Jehovah's Witnesses. So why deny that? Well, money. You mentioned that before.
Money, their name.
And they don't care about the ones that have been abused. They only care about their name, is what you said. And I repeat it, repeat it, and repeat it.
Yeah, that article there was outside the appeal court.
Yes, because
it is, like, we can get onto that shortly, but just going back a little bit.
We have 20 minutes, and I don't want to take your you got so much info. I'm going to shut up, but I want everybody to know and not miss this, that that the Jehovah's Witnesses are seeking a judicial review and high court declaration that the church does not assume responsibility for the care of children, young people, or vulnerable people. Yep. They deny. And they want a declaration in the highest court. And that's what you all are waiting for, is the high court to make a decision that keep them in this investigation or let them get out of this investigation. Am I right?
Let's be clear on that. Okay. The J-Dubs are not going to be investigated.
Okay.
All right. The investigation, no matter what the media says, they have listened to the spin from the commission. Back last year, in one of their newsletters, which they call a pānui, they said there is not going to be any more investigation because, one, they don't have time, two, they don't have the money. So if I can establish that, there is not going to be an investigation into the Jehovah's Witnesses at this stage. I'm not saying there won't be an investigation in the future.
You say that the High Court will make that declaration?
Well, we don't know what they're going to make.
Okay.
Because we haven't got it. But there won't be an investigation. The report should have been out at the end of March. They got an extension to June for the final report to come out. There is no more investigation. It is done and dusted. So once the report comes out, what we did do, because they asked for a judicial review, which was in October last year, and it took 2 weeks to come out. Judge Alice, she, from what I could see, had a pretty good grasp of the J-Dub mentality. She would sit there and you could almost see her shaking her head. She would ask another question, shaking her head. There was several times where she'd go, okay, well, let's try this again, and rephrase the question. And the lawyer for the J-Dubs said, well, you could say that. Yeah, so it's just, you sit there and you have to laugh. Now, let's just go back to the review where they were trying to say they weren't under the scope, where they don't look after children. So the review came back in favour of the Crown, not the J-Dubs. Now, some of the things that were said when I gave my submission to the commission, I gave them my story, my bits and pieces as an elder. I don't remember how many pages it was. They came back and said, Shayne, we've got to go to court and we would like a submission to focus on elder terminology and elder things. And I was only happy to do it. So when I got it, I'm going, no, I can't put that in. I had to change it so that it would be my actual experience to be able to put it across in words that I would feel comfortable and honest about telling. Now, they got it in time for the original meeting, because they've got to tell the J-Dubs what they've got so they can prepare statements and things like that. Now, that was used in the court of the review. In fact, the Simon Mount, the lawyer for the commission, came to me in the afternoon on the Tuesday and said, look, are you still happy for your submission to be used? I said, yep, no problem at all. Can I tell the judge you're in here? I said, yep. And if while you're at it, if she wants to talk to me, I'm here. Not that wouldn't happen. So anyway, that carried on, and they used words from mine, and there was another former elder who also gave a submission, because I'd seen his submission and what he'd told me, and you knew where it came from. And the day I wasn't there, because originally it was set down for 2 days, but because the J-Dubs challenged an amendment to minute 16, it got extended to 3 days. The J-Dubs on the final day, and I got this from Rachel Jackson, who was there for all 3 days, basically said to the judge, I think we're going to have to come back for a 4th day. And she goes, no, get on with it. She was really getting frustrated because she never felt any empathy for the victims. Like the Crown stood up at the very start on day one and said, look, we're here to represent the victims and we're sorry that they've gone through it. The J-Dubs never, ever said anything like that.
Yeah, they never
did
do.
not care
Mm,
about the victims.
mhm,
All they cared about was their name,
mhm,
just like every other religion.
mhm.
So it took about 2 weeks. There's a lot you could talk about in that review. And that's nothing to do with an elder. That's a single person's viewpoint of not our policy type thing. And in one article on that Tuesday, I said, well, if that's what I'm not meant to do because I did things that I shouldn't have, who appointed me into that position to look and care for the flock? Their logic was sorely lacking. And the judge could pick that up. So it came back that no, the judge said, right, I don't have the exact wording, but in short, yes, they do qualify and yes, they will stay. So the J-Dubs appealed. But what we did do in between, right at the end of that case, there was a number of us who sent to Simon Mount a lot of information just to make sure they had everything. Because while there are some issues with the commission, we didn't want Jehovah's Witnesses to get away with it, because we had things like from this book. And in there, we sent that front cover and this picture where it says that the Jehovah's Witnesses will appeal any unfavorable decision. They got that. That went in and around to the lawyers, much like the letters that it was put together with the help of a number of different people on the Say Sorry website, where we got that. We sent out nearly 300 emails to the lawyers involved, to the media, and I think you've got a clip of what one media did.
Oh, I forgot the clip. Oh, we got time for it.
We've
Rick,
got time for it.
Rick, where are you?
I'm here. We got the clip. Let's play the clip.
I forgot. I got so interested in what he had to say.
To fight the church's attempts to be exempted from the abuse and care inquiry. The church's lawyers have been in the High Court over the past 2 days, challenging the Royal Commission, William Teriti reports.
Shayne Mechen was a Jehovah's Witness elder for 12 years.
It wasn't until I left, woke up to find out what I was part of.
The 55-year-old now supports those who have been sexually abused by the church.
The abuse is not only here in New Zealand.
He and a group of survivors have travelled to the High Court in Wellington because the church is seeking to be excluded from the abuse and care inquiry. The Royal Commission started looking into Jehovah's Witness in 2019, but the church has always maintained it should not be included in the inquiry, saying in a statement it has never assumed responsibility for the care of children.
That is an outright lie. Throughout their publications, throughout their parts of their meetings, they constantly tell the elders that they need to look after children.
Luke Hollis was abused by a Jehovah's Witness following in the UK.
When that finally came out, it was effectively swept under the rug.
But the church denies it engages in any activities where a child is separated from their parents.
I just want them to be made accountable. I hope the court sees through their lies.
There are fears it could also deter abuse survivors from speaking up, which is why ex-follower Lara Kaput travelled from Perth to remind people to speak up.
In my particular case, there were 4 children in my family that were abused, and they were all abused by someone attending the Jehovah's Witnesses religion.
The judicial review wrapped up this afternoon, with the judge reserving her decision. William Teriti, News Hub.
Thank you, Rick.
Yeah, so TV3, even though we had sent out many hundreds of emails, they were the only one to turn up. And on Tuesday, they did turn up. And you saw some of the ones who were there in the courtroom watching on the review. You know, Luke, he lives in Wellington. I know he does come from Britain. And yes, he was abused. And same with Lara. But we didn't know any of those were coming. But they turned up. There were some who didn't even know that the judicial review was happening and wished they could be there. And we met some new ones who didn't even know that there were people who were speaking out against the J-Dubs. It wasn't until one person was in a taxi that he said, because he had asked, where are you going? Oh, I'm going to the thing. Oh, they were talking about that on the radio. And I got to meet her. So in the review, it was shaking the head style sorts of things. So we know the result because the judge said, no, they're in care. They're within scope. So they appealed. And that picture reminded, even at the end of that appeal case, because they said, we've got that in the office, Shayne. And once again, I said, well, whatever you need, because they do have another chance to take it to court again. Why are they doing it? They don't care about anything apart from their name. They don't really care about the victims, because if they did, what have they got to hide?
Yeah.
Whatever any of these religions got to hide, and in the going back to review,
I'll have to say, I'm sorry. We're sorry for the past. We'll make it up to you. The people would love them for it. They'd love the heads of the churches. Look what's happened in Sacramento, California. The Catholic diocese or whatever back in there, they're going bankrupt.
Yeah.
They don't understand what they're preaching love, and that is endearing to someone harmed when someone else says, I'm sorry and I want to make it up to you. But this religion, you said it, all I care about is their name, but they're on the wrong side of this.
Yeah, so they're willing to spend, and we don't know how much the J-Dubs have spent with the 2 cases. To have a QC in court, it's around $50,000 a day.
Oh.
So guesstimation-wise, it might be $500,000 New Zealand dollars that the J-Dubs have spent working with the lawyers that are telling the court what the J-Dubs have told them to say. And the three judges in the appeal were sitting there and they had a pretty good grasp on things, because they started to ask questions. Okay, so what about the obedience factor? And the lawyer would go, well, and I can't remember all the words. And so another judge, there was three judges, he would ask another question about obedience and how integral that is part of a J-Dub's life. Because if you're not obedient, you're likely to get kicked out.
Mm.
So the judges really did a fascinating job. It was in some ways quite humorous, because they were getting frustrated with the J-Dub lawyers.
Mm-hmm. And that's around the world.
Yeah, it is around the world.
The JW lawyers lie and lie some more to the highest courts of the land. We have evidence of that. It's all going to backfire on them eventually, because that's life.
Yep.
That's the way it'll go.
Well, we know they've lied in our Royal Commission, the J-Dubs.
I don't know why. Not on this issue. I just don't know why.
They just keep doing it. Well, they don't care anything apart from their name. That's why.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah,
because they don't want to be lumped in with the Catholic Church that they bashed all those years ago. They don't want to be lumped in with all the other religions that abuse people. Now, in our case, it wasn't just child sexual abuse. Many, many people from the ex-J-Dub community, and I might add, I do know some current J-Dubs that also put submissions into the Royal Commission because of the abuse they felt. But they're too scared to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And when they do leave, Shayne can't talk to family. It's just, it is really sad. So we don't know what the appeal from the appeal court is going to say. They can, as far as I understand, possibly go to the Supreme Court, because that is the highest court in New Zealand. We will just have to wait.
Of course. But the decision, no matter what it is, can't stem the tide of all of the Jehovah's Witnesses who are leaving the organization. That's a fact. In the Spanish world and the other Japanese, Korean, you name it, they're leaving because of many, many reasons. And this is a large part of the reason. Not being told the truth, they power play on the part of the organization, the control issues, the violation of human rights. So it's only a matter of time. I don't rejoice over this. I really don't. It's sad because so many people were so. It was their world. Their religion is their world, and their world is collapsing. We have to have the sympathy. Whether we should be real about this, and but we aren't going to put up with their lying.
No, and if we can do more here in New Zealand, we will. I went and reassured that to the Crown lawyers that we are here for whatever they need, and they've come back and said thank you very much. We will keep that in mind. But I guess if I can say one more thing about the appeal, and I don't know if this has much to say. It was set down for 4 o'clock. We finished at 2:30, and the judges did not want to hear the final full statements of either the commission lawyer or the Crown lawyer. Because when the Crown lawyer stood up, he said, "Oh, I'm not going to focus. I'm not going to worry about this part. And I hope you don't mind. I think we should go on to this part." The judge said, "Yep, that's fine." They did not give their full information to the judges. Now, when I walked up to Simon Mount, they seem to have a smile on their face, because normally speaking, when they don't give the full statement, it is a positive outcome for the Crown. Whether it is or whether it isn't, I don't know. We'll wait for the decision.
That's right. No.
But we will always be here to help New Zealand Legal to get all the information they need. We've got the JW for Justice, which we use to be able to represent the things we're doing as a group. Not everybody's part of the group, because now the numbers is really, at this point in time, apart from the ones we speak to overseas, is only myself and young Kelly that is doing amazing work for the cause. He does a lot of hard work, and the projects we do have that are coming up.
I want to mention that our personal lawyer here where we live, when I talked to him about the child abuse years and years ago, and I said, we have to have justice. He said, Barbara, there is no justice.
Yeah.
There is only the law.
Yep.
And I've never forgotten that, because it was so big in my head to realize that. And we have to change the laws. You have to do this through the legislators, and certainly around the world that is trying.
So
it's trying to do it, but it has to be done. And they did it in Norway. They're doing it all in some of the Eastern Europe countries, and we've been doing it here in the United States. Not enough, but it's coming.
It's a start. So to give you an idea of some of the justice that, like, say, the Catholics and other religions, not the Jehovah's Witnesses, the redress that they are getting, and don't fall over backwards, I haven't even told you this figure, a man who lives not too far from where I am, he basically said that their redress is about a cup of coffee a week for 2 years. That's all the redress that some of these victims are getting. That is no justice.
That's right. No justice.
Where is the justice for this life imprisonment of these young people? Because they've got a life sentence from now until they die.
Oh, I know it. Your heart goes out to them. And believe me, there were those at headquarters that did have big hearts in regards to child abuse. I saw the tears of part of many of the men who knew what was going on, and they were helpless to do it. Most of these people were up in age, and they're now deceased.
Yeah.
And but we keep the fight going on as long as we're alive and breathing breath. We have the wonderful activity now in the Spanish community of the Jehovah's Witnesses who are leaving and who are speaking up. And so, all these voices must be making an impression in New York, because they sure are changing things. But well, some of those changes are important to some people. I mean, wearing pants for women, that's a very important issue to many women. So, but that is not the prime issues to cure or help the victims of the violations that they have endured at the hands of the perpetrators who were making others believe that they were Bible-based, Bible-based religion, and that they agreed with it. And they were practicing such awful things, and nobody would do anything. There are so many elders who heard, and just covered it over. And then there were those who left and are leaving. Well,
It's
it's
terrible.
an hour. Do you have a concluding now? You know what I want to say to you. How do you feel now? You don't sound bored. How about your life? You don't sound sad. You don't sound bored like you were when you were leaving the witnesses. Tell us encapsulate how you feel about your life.
Oh, it's great. You still have your ups and downs, because what I've learned is even though you've left the J-Dubs, you still have some of those mentalities, and they will stay there unless you work on them. I know for myself, I went to see somebody who could help me work on getting rid of the J-Dub attitudes. Now, it can go right from a relationship to other aspects of our lives. If we've still got the J-Dub thinking, I would hate to have the J-Dub thinking. And it is hard. But for those who are listening or might listen later on, go to a professional. Just because you've left does not mean you've got rid of the traits. And I know too many ex-J-Dubs who thought they were great and things were going really nicely, and bang, something comes, whacks them on their backside, and they go spiraling nearly all the way back to when they were a J-Dub. Please go to a professional and get some assistance with the thinking. It's indoctrination that has gone crazy, and it worms into our head and drives us nuts.
It's your reaction. It's your reaction to life. How you react to life, like a J-Dub would, because of all the different points that were pounded into your head about all the different aspects of life and how you should deal with it. So it is difficult, but I'll tell you what, when you do it right, when you get it right, I should say, there is a lot of happiness.
Absolutely.
And Rick, if anybody wants to, have you got a minute to let anybody ask a question of Shayne?
Yeah, we're running a little late here, Barbara, but let's open up the lines. And for those that are listening in, we have Shayne Mechen coming in from New Zealand, and you heard his story, and you must be impressed. This man went through an awful lot with the witnesses. His life at one point was really turned upside down, but he has a really good attitude today. So if you'd like to say hello to Shayne, you've been listening in, go ahead, hit *6 on your telephone pad, and by all means, say hello to Shayne. He's on here. You can talk to him right through our platform. So I'll kind of be the icebreaker, Shayne. Boy, I'll tell you, I really enjoyed that video that was played in New Zealand. That must have had a big impact. That was done really professionally. You handled yourself in a real professional manner as well. You didn't sound like some irate person against the Watchtower. You were calm, and you handled it, and I was impressed by that. That's going to help a lot of people, Shayne. A lot of people to come to grips with what this organization's hiding behind. It's terrible.
It did have an impact here in New Zealand. In fact, I got messages who were my clients and they said, "Oh, look, I just turned TV3 News on, and what did I see? I saw your face." And even like that was in October, I did another job and I hadn't seen them for a while. And he goes, "Shayne, I saw you on TV. Keep up." I had so many messages from non-ex-J-Dub world, and they encouraged me to keep going with what is happening. So that little news snippet would have been the first one on TV for a very long time. We have had Anusha Bradley's amazing work, but it did have an impact. People did see it, and it made mud stick.
Well, that was excellent. That was excellent. Boy, I'm just going through some of the YouTube comments. Boy, there's a lot on there.
Me too. I was reading them too, Shayne. They sure thank you.
Well, we've got to do what's right. We were instructed and encouraged to speak the truth. I'm speaking the real truth, not the BS lies that WATCHT0WER shares.
Well, Shayne, you're a man and a half. Believe me when I tell you. And I want to thank you so much for wanting to come on Barbara's program tonight. I really mean it. I know it's a daytime over there, going on noontime, I guess, or it is noontime in New Zealand. But we wish that you have a really good day. And I'll send you a link, Shayne. I got your email. I'll send you a link to the program as soon as it gets uploaded to YouTube. But thank you, Shayne, for coming on. And thank you. Thank you for a great interview.
Yes.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Rick, for making this available, this time available.
Oh, yeah. No, Barbara, this is really working out well. It really, really is. The quality of our sound. Well, we have a thing called StreamYard. And boy, they're really cleaning everything up here. The video, the audio, everything is really, really good. And I want to thank Shayne for being prepared to and coming on. He's great with the sound was really good tonight. So that's a good thing. Thank you all. And we appreciate it. We'll see you in 2 weeks, Barbara.
Okay. Thanks, Rick. Thank you, Shayne. Good night, everybody.
Good
night, Barbara. Good night, Shayne. Now, don't go anywhere. Stay with us. We've got more programming coming up here on the 6 screens. We have got a great program coming up next. JW World News. We'll be talking about the latest happenings in the Watchtower organization. And friends, this organization is tanking. It really, really is. I don't know what they're going to do. Stick a fork in the Watchtower. Get them off the grill. They're cooked. We'll be talking about that next. And then, of course, at 9:30, 10 o'clock, we go to Awakening After the Watchtower with Eric. He's a former Jehovah's Witness out of Tennessee. And he'll be coming in tonight at around 10 o'clock. So we look forward to that. Again, thank you for everyone that listened into all of our networks on all of the platforms and those commenting. We appreciate it. Good night, everyone. We'll see you on our next program just come up. Stay on the channel. It'll be up in about 2 minutes. Ending it here.